Hello, my name is Troy Ruhe,
I'm Tyler Hoskins.
and you're listening to our Sick Ass Podcast. Kia ora, and welcome to another episode of the Sick Ass Podcast. We are very lucky today to have someone who actually put the theory into practice. Now, I've known this young lady for quite a few years now. I think I was definitely finishing off my degree as she was coming through the same degree, so that already kind of speaks to the type of person she is, probably just amazing. And now I'm making her feel a little bit awkward, but that's fine, that's what we're here for, and we're going to discuss a lot of this young lady's journey about why she came into studying the things that she studied and kind of where it's taken her from there. So a lot of good stories to come out today, I'm pretty sure, but today we have on Charlotte Matheson. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on, Troy.
Woo! So we're just going to cut right to the chase. So before this, we actually were speaking about self-reflection, and we've had a meet-up just before this to actually kind of get where we could go with speaking, and then you kind of talked about this huge reflection. So what were the kinds of things, well actually what prompted you to get into that reflective state?
Pretty much when you asked me if I wanted to come on the podcast, I was like, oh no, what am I going to talk about? But after we set up the date, I thought that I should organise how I want to explain my experiences, and to start that off, I needed to go back through my experiences and how they've shaped who I am now, really.
So what was your process of going through that reflection?
My process is the way I learn, I write things down. So when I went to the beach, which is my happy place,
Nice.
St. Clair.
St. Clair.
St.
Very
Clair,
nice, very
yeah,
nice.
Yep. And so I was writing down, just listing the experiences, how I felt in some of them, but what had really happened back in the day, and how that had contributed to each experience after the other.
Absolutely.
And there's always a trend that goes through, I find with my life, that if something happens to you previously, generally it'll affect something later. Decision-making process or thoughts.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, you did a Bachelor of Psych as well.
Yeah.
Do you think you've been like this though prior to going through your studies?
Been like...
So the way like that reflective self?
Definitely not.
Okay,
no,
right.
No.
So we'll go back then, and we'll kind of come through, and we'll see where that reflection took you. So you finished high school, and then you came straight into your Bachelor of Phys Ed?
Yeah. Finished high school, straight to PE and Psych. I started them on the same year, ultimately because I loved sport, and I thought I wanted to be like this exercise scientist when I first came. I remember we went up to Cambridge when we were rowing, and this guy took us through the facility up at Cambridge, and it was beautiful, and they showed me what they do and how they hook them up to like VO2 max testing, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I was like, I want to do that. So that's initially what I thought, and then I also wanted to do psychology, just so I could understand people a little more.
Interesting.
And it was very basic when I first started. I was like, you know what, it's only going to add on another year, may as well.
So, I mean, with the psychology thing, it's quite interesting that you bring that up, because the more I kind of go through it and the more science background that I get, it doesn't really matter how much I know at the minute cell. If you can't get these people, just do it. Like, we need to understand behavioral psychology and all that sort of stuff. And then so it's really difficult for us because we spend so much time kind of honing in on those skills, and then we just miss the whole people side. So we'll go back to your actual learning through it. So what was your perceptions of when you came into the degree versus what the degree actually gave you?
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, PE, I actually didn't have a lot of idea what it was. I just knew that area was what I wanted to go into, because that area had kind of been the reoccurring theme all throughout childhood, high school, and it just was the one thing that kept me sane, and I always wanted to stay on that route, because it ultimately it makes you feel good, that kind of stuff. But then the psychology, really just, I didn't know what it was. I saw a couple of papers, I remember looking at it, and I just thought, we'll give it a go, and I can always drop it if I want.
True.
Really.
Good point. And with the psychology stuff, so I'm quite interested because I did a lot of sociology and sports psych, but I didn't actually get into the actual just psychology on itself without thinking about sport. But do you feel like a lot of the stuff that you have learned, maybe without applying the theory names to things, does come across quite a bit when you deal with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've found that out more recently. This is just a very recent thing that I've been able to use what I learned maybe back 4 years ago into now. And it's really when you go into the practical setting, you realise, especially if you're talking about college athletes, you've got to remember they're college athletes. They're not athletes. So you remember when you first went to uni, right?
Yep.
Everything is just crazy.
Absolutely.
And generally now it's, thankfully it's more common to be talked about. So kids would come in and you could clearly see that they have anxiety, they've been up all night studying, bit of depression, like very, very common. And just... you're able to relate to them a little bit differently. You can kind of gauge off how they are moving because you get to know them quite well. If they're having a bad day, you're like, you can just see their body language and you're like, we'll take them to a side for a sec, just to double check. But that you can really use it a lot more as you progress and you start to know people a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just one of those things. Once you get your foot in the door and you actually start working with people, you start to see how people operate.
Really
and I think,
interesting.
Yeah, and at the same time, you get that reciprocity where they see like, oh, this person actually like likes me.
Yeah,
not
she
just
actually gives
gives a
she
shit about
is.
me. Yeah,
Exactly.
Which is cool. So, I mean, we're just going to jump ahead. So you've done all your study and then you went into your postgrad diploma?
Is that what it is? Yeah.
At Polytechnic, strength and conditioning.
Wait, hang on. I think I remember what it was. I just wrote it. It was applied science. Yeah.
Applied science.
Strength and
Right.
conditioning.
Yeah. So, and then kind of what was your reasoning for, as a postgrad, so you could have possibly gone into like a master's or that, but you went down that road of focusing on strength and conditioning.
Yeah. I think, so, because you've been through sport your whole life, right?
Sure.
You remember those coaches that are terrible and you remember those coaches that really made an impact, right? And so you kind of appreciate those people that didn't make so much of an impact because you're like, I never want to be like that. But you can also see what a great effect that just one person can have on a team or an individual, whatever they like. And so, yeah, sport was my outlet when I went through, and I remember always having these particular coaches that really were there when I was at a fork in the road and I could have gone one direction and I went the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what was it about those coaches, though, that you feel, so the ones who did like amazing things that just made you feel encapsulated within what you were doing, what was it about these people?
They cared, obviously. They took time out of their life to help you out. They'd just go out of their way, make sure you're okay, but also make sure if you wanted to be good, you would be good. So if you were putting in extra effort somewhere, they would back you and they would be like, yeah, come on with me, have an extra session, do this, and so just really there.
Like caring people.
Yeah.
And do you feel that it's rubbed off in you and the way that you kind of go about your life?
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Well, it's always those things that we can always just hone over time. And I think with coaching as well, the cool thing is that you are part of someone's life.
Yeah, and you don't realise how big that is.
Oh, yeah.
Until someone comes back around and they tell you.
And then, you're going to be getting a lot of those in the future. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed,
like, hey, you know what? You were my second mother.
Yeah, I try to stay away from the mother card when you're coaching a guys team.
My second auntie, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So before we get down onto that road, when we actually talk about you working with athletes, you as the athlete, kind of where I knew you, so you went through football. We did CrossFit together. You did a lot, and you were one of those people that kind of just fell in love with movement in itself. But the opposite of just moving for the sake of it is just focusing on aesthetics.
Yep.
So you were competing in bodybuilding. Tell us a bit about that.
I was, and I remember the day that I decided to do it. So I was working at Unipol, just doing group fitness and seeing everyone that came in. I was just finishing off soccer at the time, and I was just scrolling through Instagram, and I think it was just CrossFit athletes, and they just looked strong, they looked jacked, and I was like, I want to look like that.
Right.
And so I figured out how to kind of do that path, researched a coach that I thought would be really good, and I was like, give it to me and I will do everything you say.
Yeah. So we won't throw anyone under the bus, but the types of things that you actually did going through as a bodybuilding competitor, what were the types of training you were doing? Because I think, it's questionable practice. I'll say that. I mean,
it's an obsessive practice.
It's a very obsessive practice. So we'll actually talk about just the training itself. Then we can add a layer of food, and then we can add a layer of lifestyle. So what types of training were you doing in that time?
Very basic. So I was very, very new to lifting because I just played sport. And I came into Unipol, taught group fitness, obviously knew basics. Actually, basics have gotten a lot better since then. But yeah, and then so I just got the same coach that I had as a diet, did my training, and I said, just give it to me and I'll do exactly what you say. I don't want to think about it, yeah. And so it was very simple, basic lifts, just high reps, and lots of cardio.
Lots of cardio, yeah. So with all of that sort of training, I mean, you were just probably doing some sort of split, and you're going through with that. Do you find though that you as a individual are very, maybe you're not obsessive, but the practice made you obsessive?
I have a very obsessive personality anyway.
Right. So you were pretty much made for this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think my whole life has revolved around sport, and you just get obsessed with it, and then kind of everything else is just fitted in around it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that once you step into it, you're like, I'm just going to do this for fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to do
I don't want to get on stage. My worst fear was getting on stage and looking like crap.
Right.
Yeah, I just remember the whole time, and you know how you're not ready through a prep, you're not ready right until the end, and then thank God at the end. But yeah, you're just freaking out the whole time.
So how many times have you competed?
5.
You competed 5 times?
Yeah.
Right. So you've had loads of experience, and hopefully each of those experiences maybe didn't got better over time.
Yeah.
So how was it that you were, because you were also at university, you were also working, and you were like just trying to be an athlete in general. What type of lifestyle do you think, how did your lifestyle get better over each of the experiences?
Oh, okay. Well, the first 3 times it didn't.
Okay.
Because you can't.
Right.
You can't have a life if you're going to do it like that. But luckily I had very good friends that stuck with me. I remember bought me my lunch when you forgot it, Erin turned up. And so I was very lucky to have people around me that really gave me a hand. So most of that I really owe to them, because I would have really, really struggled to do it if a couple of times people hadn't given us a hand. But yeah.
So on the better times, so the first 3 times you kind of just went through the same thing. What were the things that helped you, besides the other people, but maybe your own mindset, or maybe just how you approached your prep in the last 2 times? How did that make it easier or better?
You just learn. You just learn more about food. The first time I remember I was weighing it down, I wouldn't even go 1 gram over.
Ooh.
It was ridiculous. And then by the end, you're like, if someone offers you a lolly, you know what? It's not going to make me fat.
Right.
If it's not my diet plan, I may have a jet plane if I choose.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? But yeah, so it's just a little bit more flexible. And the last one I did, was a different federation, and so I changed looks, which was fuller in the legs and less in the upper body, which is more me anyway. So I just chose the category that I wanted to look like.
Oh, cool. So you suited it to your body.
I was like, I want to look like that, we'll do that.
That's interesting though. Hey, how you can see what things look like, and you can just be like, I'm just going to change these variables and kind of go for that. So how did your training change to kind of be able to do that sort of thing?
As in flexibility?
Oh, no, flexibility, but also just the types of training you were doing to try and get that different look.
Okay. So at the start, obviously didn't know what I was doing, and I wrecked myself at the start. Right. And then I kind of, as I learned more throughout the process, the last 2, I did my own training. So I programmed myself, and I just had someone for nutrition.
Right.
And obviously you'd tell the nutritionist what you were doing. So yeah, I really just worked on the parts of my body that I looked at all the time. I was like, that needs to be better, and in the end it's your whole body really.
Yeah, for sure.
But and I learned more and more about the process and training throughout.
And I think that's why, that's definitely why I love doing all of this stuff, is so that you can, because you've always got something to learn off. People are like,
Absolutely.
Oh, you know it all. And I'm like, no,
I know
never.
nothing.
As soon as I learn a little bit, I just know, okay, I've got so much more to learn.
Yeah.
And we are our own science experiments when we're doing it, and we can just be like, it reminds me of, I don't know, you probably went through the whole watching bodybuilding movies, and do you remember, so on Pumping Iron?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Right. Arnold talks about the clay, and he's like, instead of being able to put more clay on to get a bigger deltoid, you have to do these sorts of movements, and then you get bigger delts and all that sort of stuff. Obviously not that easy. Still a skinny boy, and my calves haven't grown, but that's the kind of thing where we can just figure out for our body what we need in that time. Now, I just want to go back to something you said. You said it wrecked you. Right, this is the dark side.
It's the dark
Everyone
side.
says you look cool. Instagram photos are awesome,
Yeah,
but what? If you don't mind sharing,
No, God.
was the wrecking that you talk about?
I think just where my coach just didn't have the knowledge that you would need if you're not taking steroids, and if you are, I would have been 19.
Oh yeah.
And to do that kind of training to someone so young is just awful for them. So I think my training started off, it was normal, but by the end, all up in a day, I was running a half marathon with 2 weight sessions and potentially a spin class on top of that.
What?
I know, right? Can you imagine the state?
And that's with like very little fuel.
Yeah, under 1,000 calories.
Under 1,000 calories.
It's crazy, right?
You're eating as much as a rabbit.
Oh, it was like, I was taking a lot of amino acids, clearly.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone thought would make you not lose muscle,
Yeah, it's
which
gonna
we know
preserve your
now
muscle
is
mass.
not always the case.
Yeah.
And a lot of egg whites. Came on with egg whites and fish and broccoli.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah,
so with that sort of thing, what type of thing does actually happen to you? Obviously, you're going to drop weight like crazy.
Yeah.
And you think that that's working, but then physiologically and even emotionally, what are the types of things that actually happen to you?
I really wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. I had no idea what I'd gotten myself into. But because like the obsessive personality, you're so focused on the end goal, you will literally do anything, like almost anything, to get to that end goal. So I just thought it was part of the process. So at the start, I'd be in the very minor part, you'd be, I can't go out tonight, I've got to get up early before work or before uni in the morning to do cardio or whatever it was. And so progressively you'd get grumpier as you got, I'm real bad hangry. Yeah. Not a good person to talk to hungry. Yep. So grumpy all the time, I was tired, and by the end I remember talking to this guy Ethan who was doing PE and he'd done it the year before, and he was like, just make sure you go home and sleep in the middle of the day. And I was like, good one. But like, seriously, I couldn't get through 3 hours without having to go to sleep just because you were so empty. Like menstruating periods gone. I didn't see that for years. And you just, like, your skin was different, your just whole body. I got this knee injury, so I couldn't run anymore. I was doing upper body rowing for sport. It was just such a interesting time. But by the end, like, finished it and it was great. But the thing was that I'd won the competition, so the guy was like, are you coming to nationals? And I was like, oh, it's 12 weeks away, sure. And 12 weeks is a very long time if you're like that for most of the time. Yeah,
because you're almost thinking hour to hour. You're thinking meal to meal, and like
you just wait for the next one.
You just like, you eat that one and it's kind of like, oh wait, like not long until the next one, and then all that sort of stuff happens. So you spoke about amenorrhea, which is something that that's the loss of menstruation, and that happens in athletes, but that's also, I mean, they are still eating what they're eating, and now you have like purposely
done it to yourself. Like, I was doing it to myself.
You're training super hard because we kind of think more is better. And this is kind of, it's a difficult sport to be in because what you do in that moment, you have to think so far ahead.
And you don't.
Yeah, and you really don't.
I didn't.
And then so, I mean, this is something that we haven't spoken about on this podcast ever, but can you just tell me the 3 days leading up to your actual being on stage and what those feelings are like?
Honestly, I can barely remember. I think I was crying most of the time. I was still having to do cardio. I was freezing. I used to sleep in like beanies and puffer jackets just because you have no body fat. And the shitty Dunedin like flats.
Yep.
But I was in Christchurch, so I went up, I caught a bus up the week before because you have no brain. I left my phone on the bus, I left my bikini on the bus. And I missed the bus. Which was very normal for me right at the end of a comp. But anyway, we got up there, stayed at Dad's, and God, Dad was so understanding. I was like, you got to take all the crap food out of the house or just put it in your room. And I think I slept most of the time. I only got up for the gym to get a tan, to register, and then straight back to bed.
That's so funny, because that's like, everyone sees those the photos or like someone who shredded up and they're just like, man, They are the fittest people in this world. Like, that's what I want to look like. They're strong, they're powerful.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But then when you do get on stage, though, you will get that rush. But then just tell me the feeling before you're about to, so you're backstage, you're pumping up.
You're making me nervous just talking about it.
You get on stage and then you get off stage. What are the just switches and feelings in that time?
So before you get on stage, I met one of my best friends now that first comp, and we were cracking up backstage because we had food, we had some sugar, we were ready to go. We're doing up our shoes, and you're just thinking, do not fall over on that stage. But my friends came up for it. Had Erin's family there as well. Her whole family came up, and so when I got on stage, obviously very, very nervous. But on there, you start to relax because the crowd's black. So you're kind of just standing next to people, and you're just really focusing on the poses and tensing what you need to, and waving, trying to act like you're happy. But then you get off, and it's a wave of relief, and you're like, what can I eat?
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so just now that we think about the entire process, would you do it again knowing what you know?
What a question. I think if it was the right time in my life, sure. I did think about doing it over at the States, but I just there's no way I can do this. Obviously, my other ones got better after that first two. I learned a lot more and realised I didn't have to do it just like that. But I think if you're in the right point in your life and you can prioritise that, then sure. But if you need to prioritise work, if you've got kids, it's very hard.
Yes, nice. Okay, I think that's a very well-rounded answer. And you touched on the States. So let's go there. So why did you end up going over to the States, and kind of how did that all come about?
So through the Otago Polytech, they did have the international opportunity to get to Dartmouth. So I remember talking to Matt Blair, and I said, well, what is the point of this course? And he was like, oh, we've got all these internationals. So anyway, I took the one spot that went over to Dartmouth, and I just wanted to experience it over there. I knew you get paid more. I know there was a lot, better coaches, I'm going to say it. Better coaches.
Nice.
Just a lot more to choose from because it's America. Yeah. And I just wanted to see it and experience it, really.
Right, cool. And what were the gigs that you were kind of doing here before you actually got over to America?
I mingled in Otago Rugby Academy for a little bit. That was really cool. That was my first kind of taster of strength and conditioning. Yeah. Did Alhambra for a little bit with the men's prems over there. And then after that, as soon as that finished, I was straight over.
Cool. So what was your role when you were back over at Dartmouth?
So my main role was rugby strength and conditioning coach when I was with rugby, and in my spare time, or my other time, you'd go into the strength and conditioning office, and you'd be another strength and conditioning coach with the other coaches. Right.
So just walk me through maybe a regular day or a regular busy day.
Okay. Sure. They all look the same. Pretty much. So what I just came from, really, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was just winter over there, so you'd be walking to work in the snow, about -10 degrees. I have this life-saving jacket that someone gave me.
Nice.
And then so you'd get there, because I was the newest one there and I was under everyone else, I had the job to set up all the iPads, take out all the equipment, which actually got you quite warm in the morning. If you were going somewhere else, it depended who the first one was, but you'd have all the bands laid out, ready for the warm-up. So you'd start off with that gig and you'd just go straight through. You'd grab maybe a bar at 10 o'clock. There were just constant teams coming in, but it was so hard to stop because all the coaches there were phenomenal. And you just wanted to be with them all the time. And you learnt so much from not only the kids, the coaches, but just everyone around you, and how you interact and how they eventually learn how to become better at their sport.
Interesting. So I'm quite interested in the whole kind of setup that you had with the staff that you were working with. What was the environment? So did they have a head S&C?
Yeah.
And they kind of had people under?
I have really no idea what I was doing at the start. I was so scared. But I came in, they've got a director of strength and conditioning. So they have this building called Florin. So bottom floor is lecture theatres, second floor is the whole strength and conditioning gym and offices, and then top floor is just all football. And then right at the end of that you'd have the coach's office, the cross and all that kind of jazz. But so we had the director of strength and conditioning, under them the associate director of strength and conditioning. You'd have 3 other head coaches, and then I'd be under those guys.
Right. And when you kind of came in, you you kind of spoke about something that kind of, I don't know why it happens, but it happens in sport, which is kind of you go through like not a hazing phase, but this is like you need to earn your right to be where you are.
Yeah.
And you kind of go through, but through that, you actually learn quite a bit about not only just the gear, but like you get a lot of hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Was there anything kind of during that time, was there ever a time really that you felt like, oh no, I'm not meant to be here? Or
Oh, nah, I don't think I did, I think the first week, everything that I did was just wrong, and it's just because I didn't know what to do. No one told me this was my job. I was kind of just left and had to find my way through what the coaches expected of me, what the teams expected of me. So I think after that first week, and I was very honest that I didn't know what I was doing to the coaches,
nice.
And they just said to me, they were like, "Oh, just get into the teams, get stuck in." And once you get stuck in, you start to learn the athletes, who they are, how to help them, what kind of cues they respond to. You become a lot more comfortable, and when you can see that you're actually making a little bit of a difference, confidence builds.
And so just for your kind of putting yourself in there, what types of things were you allowed to do? Was there ever a chance that you could actually start looking at programming, or were you mostly just carrying that out?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I was programming Dartmouth Rugby the whole time.
There we go.
So I had Dartmouth Rugby to start off with, and then I think after the pre-season, that's when I came into the strength and conditioning gym with all the other teams.
Yeah.
So I was programming rugby through the whole way, and I was very lucky that the coach there, he's an ex-strength and conditioning coach. So I could show him the program what do you think?
Yeah.
And he'll be like, oh, think about this, think about this, think about this. And so that was a really, really good learning experience for me. And then you would go into all the coaches in the gym, you could give them anything. I still sent them my newest program that I gave them, and I said, can you just look at this? And they were like, yeah, great, sweet. And I was just having someone else to look at it, and by the end you'd have the associate director getting you to look at their program and telling them what you thought. You were just like, whoa. But it's just awesome that you can have that collective discussion around the job like that.
Well, you touched on multiple things that I think need to come out. No, this is very good stuff. Firstly, you admitted when you didn't know. Yeah. And from there, people are so much more receptive because they're just like, yes, you shouldn't know because you've never been in this position before. And they're like, that's what we're here to help you with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is also being able to get help from other people. Yeah. So you probably have multiple chats where you just chuck programs in there. And you just roast me.
Come on, give it to me. I want your feedback.
Yeah, because that will make you better. It makes you so much better. But so many people now find it oh, he told me I should do this instead of this. He hates me. It's no, we're trying to make you better so that you can help the people that you're helping even better from that. And then the last thing that we kind of got from all of that is that you're planning on a very large scale. Yeah. So let's just contrast this to bodybuilding training, or the training that you got from bodybuilding. And if you could go back and look at or even just people now who program just drop sets till we can't move our arms. So what are the types of things that you would go back and maybe just apply some structure there?
That's a very hard question because it depends what your end goal is.
100%.
So if you're an athlete, obviously you have some serious periodization. If they're a power sport, a strength sport, an endurance sport, it really just depends on how you program it. But I would 100% program it differently to bodybuilding, because if you're playing a sport, a lot of sports are contact, a lot of sports change of direction, they need some speed, whereas bodybuilding, you just want to look good, it's the easiest program you could ever do.
For sure.
So I'd a fresh bodybuilder, I'd straight linear, probably, if they're fresh, maybe, really would. I find bodybuilding training probably the easiest training, either maybe because I've done it for longer, but just the end goal, I find it so much easier to just volume is hypertrophy. Add some strength in there and you're off the way laughing.
With all of them though, one of the kind of common themes is just don't hurt them.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you injure someone, so it doesn't matter what the training kind of is, because if you underdose them a little bit, they're fine. We just have to pick it up the next couple of times. If you go over a little bit, they might get a few. But if you hurt someone, they can't come back to tell us. So were there any learnings during your experiences?
In the States, if you hurt someone, your job is on the line. Yeah. And if you do that to someone, you are right up shit creek. Yeah. And if it is completely your fault. So wait.
So how did you go about it, and how did you make sure that you could kind of contain all of that to try, keep people safe?
You've got to, it depends who you're working with. You've got to take into context the person or the athlete. So the people that I was training, they were at college. A lot of them were first and second years, and even so, like, I tried to figure out without kind of getting too much into their business what their drinking days were and stuff like that, because if they're coming in dehydrated, hungover to a 7 a.m. session, and we're smashing out like 85%, that scares me, because I don't want them to do that. Yeah. And I eventually said to them, I said, if you are that hungover, I don't want you here. It's fine. It's fine. Just don't come. Have some water and come in later. Yeah. But yeah, and especially because they're college athletes, so around exams, and especially because they're Ivy League, like everything is on the line for them, so they need good grades to stay in the Ivy League. Yeah. So that is their first priority. It's not sport, and it's not the party culture, it is academics, which is a little bit different to other athletes that I've worked with. And so when they come in, they are either have been up all night studying, haven't slept. I remember I had a few guys come to me and say, I slept for 2 hours, I've only slept for 5 hours all week, and I'm just like, oh my God, like, you've just got to realise that they are students before they are athletes.
Yeah, we can't all have the Mamba mentality, and I think all the, like
a lot going on.
I got up at 4 and all that, but like they probably went to bed at 8 as well. Like the people who try to show that they were getting up early, that they're like, no, but like...
they had to be there. If they weren't there, they were on tight rein. Like, so if you're at a college over there and you're playing a sport, you have, some of them have 3 strikes, some of them, like, it is intense. But that's just the way they are. That's just a big difference.
But then if they do make it though, there's a lot of money in the pot.
Oh yeah.
Right. So now let's actually talk about the money in the pot. As someone coming through strength and conditioning, I know, especially even just getting to PE, a lot of people are like, what types of jobs can I get? Like, what type of money is actually in it? But we are very like passionate people anyway. Yeah. And I think, to our detriment, we kind of don't know our value. And there'll be times where you're like, no, it's all good. I'll do it for free.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, for sure, okay.
So, you were interning, so that's fine. But then going forward, you're doing more study.
Yeah, so like technically it was a job at Dartmouth Rugby, and then I was interning at the strength and conditioning office. I see. Yeah. So they did pay me a bit for that, which was awesome. Otherwise, I would not have been able to be there. Right. Had to pay rent, had to eat. And then, so then after that, I applied for every single job that I saw on the American website that would be able to have me, that would be able to pay me enough for me to stay in the States, legitimately. Right. So I applied for this one job and got a call. I was talking to the coach when he was interviewing me for like an hour and a half. And half of it was just like yarns. And he just got on really well with them, and anyway they ended up hiring me. They didn't really know who I was, and they knew I was from New Zealand, so it's a little bit more of a risk with the visas, but the deal was, if you go over there, you coach, you do strength and conditioning, but you also can do your masters. Cool. And that's a 2-year gig.
So you're going to go back and do your masters?
Yeah, I'm going back in about 3 weeks.
In about 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
So you're going to get that all sorted to get yourself over there. And I guess the one thing a lot of people will start to think about, obviously you're going to have a lot of on-the-ground work, but then when you start thinking long-term, so, that's pretty lucky you get to work with these people, but then thinking long-term, like where does Charlotte end up?
Yeah, do you know how many times I've had that question in the last however many weeks? So my answer is I really don't know, and I'm enjoying not knowing for a bit. So after this job with, so I have a general idea, but after this job at Tennessee, because I'm doing a master's in counselling, there's kind of 2 avenues that I could go down. So you can either go down maybe like this. So at the universities, they have psychologists and counsellors and nutritionists and all that kind of stuff at universities to help athletes through. So you can either do that side or you can do the strength and conditioning side. So I think that I'll do strength and conditioning for longer because it's so much fun. Absolutely. But also being able to have that knowledge of kind of the counselling, because when the athletes come in, you see them so much. And if you tell them to go to a counsellor, chances are they're not going to go. 100%. Especially, like, that's my experiences anyway. So just being able to give them a little bit of an extra hand in their life or with whatever they need, and knowing that it's the right thing to do. Right. Yeah.
So with that sort of, it's kind of cool because you also had that like psych background. So I don't know if that was worked into anything at all there or not. Like, did you work that into, so from your psych background going into maybe something like that?
Yeah, when I did psych, I didn't know where I was going to go with it, but it really has just turned out that way. But I've always been slightly interested in it.
Yeah, nice.
So it's kind of just come back around, really.
Yeah, you're just a really good people person, and
people just interest me.
Yeah, right, and that's. It's something that drives me crazy is that some people are just so much more into their own social media that they're not actually becoming a good practitioner by just being with people. It's like, how do I grow this following? It's like, how about you just grow your athletes? And
and they can speak for you.
Oh, man. Okay. Before I go off track.
But was one thing with that, like, generally the strength and conditioning coach, like, it's not a massive part of their sports. Obviously it helps them, like, not get injured, but it doesn't make them a good athlete always.
Yeah.
It just helps them along the way.
Yeah. So I had this discussion with Marty, actually, in one of the earlier episodes where we were just talking about, like, I mean, some of these people will make it.
Yeah.
Some people won't, but we just want to make them good humans.
Yeah.
Like, really good guys.
And you learn so much in the gym that relates back to life. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't realise until last year, really, or this year, that how much of a difference being in that environment can have on your life or how on your relationships with the people that you are around 24/7.
Absolutely.
Or the way you treat other people.
Yeah. I mean, I think you end up having a lot of, firstly, just respect for other people that are in your life because you know that they're helping you be where you are. And then I think you also learn, like, the value of hard work.
Yeah.
But then also kind of to a detriment because with most athletes, we're very competitive and just, like, push really, really far. I had a question. So now we talk gender, we'll bring it in now. So you're a female. But you're also, I think, you just kind of are out there and you're happy to be out there.
Yeah.
And it's fine. How was that received when you went over there?
Yeah, that's right. So when I went over there, America's a bit backwards, in my opinion, socially. So things that are here... So it would be very normal for me to go over, say, like, to you guys or a bunch of Unipol boys, be like, do you want to go pass the ball around? If you said that to people in the States, they'd look at you and they'll be like, what?
Really?
Yeah, well, my experiences, which it hasn't been huge, but, like, it's got a lot more of a gap.
Yeah.
And, so when I first got there, there was this room full of boys and I was like, okay, looks about right, because PE degree is full of guys.
For sure.
Sports always, it's just how it's been, and which you've got to adapt to sometimes, and you can put up another fight in another areas.
Yep, very true.
So I got in there, and they're all there, and they didn't. I don't think they knew how to talk to me.
Yeah.
So I was. I had Cam, which was the other guy that went over to do another side of the applied science with me, and he was able to have a conversation with the boys, whereas if I talked to the boys, they would get very, very nervous and look at me. And if you're trying to have a joke with them, they'd kind of look very worried, stand still, look at me, a little bit confused, and then kind of smile and agree.
Yeah.
And so with time, though, they like get to know who you are. It wears off, obviously, and you can start being normal with them. But yeah, they just... A lot of them haven't been coached by a girl before. I've never been coached by a girl before.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to get to is with the coaching, like when you start to break that mold, did you just end up treating them like everyone else, right?
Yeah, I think so. But it would be different for someone that's maybe come from, say, just a girls only school and just had females in their life. You might look at guys and be like, how do I relate to them? But I can't answer for that because I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still very nerve-wracking coaching guys because you don't always know how they're going to receive you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But then again, you're probably stronger than heaps of them anyway.
They give me a shot, I'm like, do you want to have a lift?
Yeah, nice. See, you can throw down when necessary.
Yeah, you can. You can throw it out when necessary.
Yeah, very good. So I just in terms of time, so I got two more questions, but my first question is more so we've been touching on it through the entire thing. We kind of talked about like movement for aesthetics, and then we talked about movement for being like just a better performer in general, and kind of how I've seen you. You went through your bodybuilding, and I've watched you evolve over the time, and kind of I guess your philosophy, not on training itself, but your reasons for training have changed. So
absolutely.
Can you kind of just like talk us through that process of
like reasons for coaching, or
no, both, like just like your philosophy around movement in general?
Jeez.
It's a big question.
Movement in general. Well, it's to me, even going to the States, it is real shocking how badly people move, and because they haven't been taught.
Absolutely.
But movement in general.
So we can talk health, we can talk performance, we can talk just everything.
It's such a big kettle of fish. But if you learn how to move, if you learn how to, it doesn't have to be working out, or just treat your body well and get it functioning well, your whole outlook on life changes so much. You feel better, you think clearer, you're motivated, not always, obviously, but it helps you with other things in life. So if you're talking that way, sure. But movement-wise, we had a couple of athletes hugely genetically gifted, wouldn't do their rehab, got injured all the time, but they had so much potential. But because they didn't know how to move, they didn't know how to use their own bodies, they just kept getting injured, and which is so sad to watch, because if they're not showing up, I'm not their mum, I'm not going to chase them around. So if, you've got 50 other athletes at least.
True. Yeah. And
if you watch them, they get so cut up about not being able to play, and if you just say, why don't you just show up? They go, show up for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Don't see them again. So
you saw them through. Sorry, I didn't even ask about this, but you saw them through their training as well as game days.
Yes. So I travelled with them, to the state games or state games in different states. You have a lot of bonding time with them. Start to know them very well.
So I've actually always had this kind of in the back of my head, because going through sport, but also helping out with different sports, it was really weird, because what you would see in the gym was so different to what you saw on the field. I felt bad. There were the people so good in the gym, did everything you said, hit every number, recover well. Then they get on the field and something just happens. They crumble. So did you've experienced that
all
as well?
All the time. It's so common. So you can have someone that's amazing, and then you just watch them play, and you're like, what the hell? But if you're not good at your sport, then you can't excel in your sport. It's always going to be skill first, and strength and conditioning is there to obviously strength decreases injury majorly, and it can help you get faster, which they do, but overall, if you can't kick a ball, you can't throw a ball, or you can't read the play, it's just not going to happen for you.
I think that's
savage.
It's true. You're very disposable, and that's where when people would always talk about the top 2 inches, that's when I was like, man, these people suck in the gym, but as soon as they're out on that field, they're meant to be there.
But that's a very few of them.
Yes.
Very few.
Oh yeah. Don't get that twisted.
Very few. But those ones that just beautiful and genetic and awesome. But in saying that, you can also make them better in the gym. They'll get faster in the gym if you train them right. They're stronger, more powerful. So
Nice. Very good. All right. So just final reflections for yourself. This is for everyone to have a tangible takeaway from this discussion, because it's been just full of gems, absolutely full. But now we're talking about you, so not the coach anymore, but we're talking about Charlotte. What is it, something that you do close to daily, or maybe daily, that makes you feel like I've had a very productive day?
Well, I haven't always had a productive day. Some days I'm not productive. But I think it's really important to, especially if you are working with people, is to check in with yourself. So know how you're feeling, really learn yourself and how you know that you will respond to different situations. But it always begins, you got to work out, you got to eat right.
Nice.
You got to eat right, you got to work out. And I think it's also important that you can get caught up in all the training, but you've got to have your own identity that's away from the coach. So you get called coach for 16 hours a day, but then you go home and you're actually not a coach.
For sure.
You're your own person. A lot of people get caught up in just their job, especially strength and conditioning. It's who they are. And I think, on the side note, with all the COVID, we had the athletes in America that have been training since they've been 12. So you've got these basketball athletes that have always trained and just been in it, and then they go home, they can't train, they're stuck at home, and they don't know who they are.
True.
Same with coaches, and some of them start to really struggle because they don't know themselves. So that's a whole other kettle of fish.
No, it is a whole other kettle of fish. We'll just look at those fish for a bit, because the same thing happened when you actually joined in on some of the chats that I had with just our New Zealand boys who we studied with.
Oh, that was great to see you guys.
And they found it it was. So for me, it was the deepest I've ever seen them be, because they were truly oh my gosh, I'm finding this really, really hard.
And it was awesome, right?
Yeah. And we opened up and we actually got to talk about that, and I was just like, man, It doesn't matter if we get better as coaches. Like right now, we are focusing on just being people.
Exactly. And you can't be a good coach if you're not a good person.
Aha. There we go. There is the quote from today. It is true.
It's true, though.
Yeah.
It is. I really stand by it from what I've seen.
Yeah. Oh, man. That is amazing. So, that has been, unless you have anything else to throw out, that has been another episode of the Sick As Podcast. Absolutely. I felt like I was in a group fitness class right now. There's
It's been a long time.
So much energy. You're just throwing it around the place. But there's so many different gems. And I think the one thing that we try to get across quite a bit through this is that we can just say, if you are a human and you're willing to show a lot of humility and just be like, I don't know shit. And
Absolutely.
Just like,
I didn't know shit.
and just, from there, just explaining to other people that you are still learning, and then you realize that everyone else is still learning as well, and we're all just in this journey together. I think life just gets a lot better because you're not focusing on trying to always achieve clarity. You're just trying to kind of like, clean up where you are around
Get better each day, clean up, But it's interesting though, because all the older, even the director of strength and conditioning, they ask for your opinions.
Yep.
Like they don't think they're that good either.
Yeah.
They know their experiences, but if you ask them questions, they're like, what do you think?
Oh.
And it's like, whoa, like you've got this director of strength and conditioning asking what I think, and you just, and you know that'll probably be the reoccurring theme throughout your coaching.
Oh, yes, we are always evolving. The day, before we swipe out here, the day you believe you know it all, you've lost the fight, mate. So, that has been another episode. Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Troy. Honour to be here.